My drunk Air Force wife beat me. Cops caught her lover hiding in our bedroom. This story is crazy. I called the cops on my wife. 22 years in the United States Air Force, 4 grown children. And I called the sheriff's department on my wife of almost 3 decades because the man she was sleeping with was hiding in our spare bedroom while she was choking me on my own kitchen floor. The deputy's body cam caught some of it. That body cam footage is what won me my divorce in Virginia 9 months later. I retired out of the United States Air Force as a senior master sergeant after 22 years of service. I am 53 years old. My wife and I were married for 28 years. We raised 4 children together, 3 boys and a girl, all of them grown and out of the house. The youngest is 22 and the oldest is 27. We bought our forever home in Virginia about 6 miles from the front gate of Langley. After I retired, I took a contractor job on base, and she stopped working her receptionist position to do whatever she wanted. What she wanted, it turned out, was to drink. Now she had always been a drinker. Every base I was stationed at over those 22 years, she found the spouses club, she found the wine nights, she found the parties. I never thought much of it because I was deployed half the time, and she was raising 4 kids by herself. She earned a few drinks at the end of the day in my book. But after I retired and the kids were gone, the drinking changed. It went from 2 glasses of wine after dinner to a bottle of wine at lunch. Then it went to a bottle of wine at lunch and a bottle of wine at dinner. Then it went to her keeping a flask in her purse. I should have seen it coming. About 18 months before everything blew up, I caught her cheating for the first time. She had been going out to a bar about 4 miles from our house, sits right off the main road. She told me she was meeting up with girlfriends from the spouses club. What she was actually doing was meeting a man named Daryl. Daryl was a regular at the bar, around 50 years old, divorced once, worked as a freight dispatcher for a trucking company. I caught it because Daryl's wife, his current wife, his second wife, drove to my house one afternoon and rang my doorbell. She had a stack of text messages between Daryl and my wife going back 4 months. She had photographs of them leaving the bar together. She had a hotel receipt for a Hampton Inn 11 miles up the highway from us. She left the stack on my counter and walked back out to her car. She did not say more than 2 sentences to me the whole time. I sat in my home office for about an hour and read every text message. Then my wife came home from the gym at 4:30 p.m. and I confronted her. She cried. She begged. She said it was a mistake. She said she had ended it 3 weeks before I found out. She said she would do anything I asked. She wanted to go to marriage counseling. She wanted to go to AA. She wanted us to see a marriage counselor. She wanted me to give her one more chance. And I am going to be honest with every guy watching this. I gave her that chance. After 28 years and 4 kids, I was not ready to throw it away over a 4-month affair with some bar drunk. We did 9 months of weekly marriage counseling. She did go to AA for about 5 weeks before she stopped going, and I thought we were healing. I was a fool. About 8 months after we ended counseling, the drinking came back hard. She started leaving the house in the evenings again, said she was going to a yoga class, said she was going to grab dinner with her sister, said she was going to the grocery store and would come back 4 hours later with 1 bag of frozen broccoli and reeking of bourbon. When I asked her where she had been, she would explode. She would tell me I was a controlling, jealous prick. She would tell me I was paranoid because I never trusted her after Daryl. She would tell me I needed to get over it or get out. And when I would push back, the abuse started. I want to be clear about something for the men watching this video. I am 6'2" and 215 pounds. I retired from the Air Force as a senior master sergeant. I am not a small man. And my wife was hitting me, slapping me at the dinner table. throwing wine glasses at my head. Once she came at me with a kitchen knife in her right hand because I asked her to please not drive the kids' old car after she had finished a bottle of Pinot. I never hit her back. I never put my hands on her, not one time in 28 years, because I knew exactly what would happen if I did. I would be the one in handcuffs, retirement gone, contractor job gone, name in the paper. So I would walk away, sleep on the couch, and pretend it did not happen the next morning. Listen, I know there are men watching this who have been through the same thing and never told anybody. It happens way more than you think. About 6 weeks before everything came apart, I started suspecting she was seeing Daryl again. Same bar, same nights, same lies about yoga and the grocery store. I did not say anything to her. I just started paying attention. One evening in early October, I told her I was going up to the VFW hall for a card game with some buddies and would be home around 11 p.m. I left the house at 6:15 p.m. I drove to the VFW. I had one beer. Then I told the guys I was not feeling great and headed home around 8:30. When I pulled into my driveway, I saw a black F-150 parked 3 houses down on the opposite side of the street. I had never seen that truck before. I parked at the curb. I walked up to the front door and walked in. The first thing I heard when I walked into my house was laughter coming from upstairs, my wife's laughter, and a man's voice. I stood in the foyer for about 30 seconds. I did not climb the stairs. I did not yell. I walked into my kitchen. I pulled my cell phone out of my pocket and I called the non-emergency line for the sheriff's department. I told the dispatcher there was an unknown male intruder upstairs in my house. Now I knew it was not an intruder. I knew exactly who was up there, but I also knew that if I called and reported a domestic dispute, the response time would be different and the documentation would be different. I wanted a deputy in my driveway as fast as legally possible, and I wanted the body cam rolling. The dispatcher told me to stay on the line and to step outside if I felt unsafe. I stayed on the line. I stepped out into my own front yard, and about 90 seconds later, I heard my wife screaming my name from inside the house. She had heard me on the phone. She came running down the stairs in her bathrobe with her hair half done up and her makeup running, and she came right out the front door at me. She was screaming that I was sneaking around on her. She was screaming that I was setting her up. She was holding a wine bottle in her right hand by the neck. She swung that bottle at the side of my head. I ducked. She missed. She came at me again, this time with her fingernails, and she got me right across the side of my neck, drew blood. Then she grabbed me by the neck and started screaming at me again. I had her on speakerphone the entire time, talking to dispatch. Dispatch heard every second of it. I retreated up against my own garage door and put my hands up. She was still screaming. She was telling me she would kill me. She was telling me she would burn the house down, and she was so drunk she could barely stay on her feet. About 4 minutes after dispatch picked up, the first squad car turned onto my street. Lights on, no siren. A deputy stepped out of that cruiser with his body cam on. He saw me bleeding from the neck. He saw her with the wine bottle still in her hand. He drew his weapon and ordered her to drop the bottle. She dropped it. 2 more deputies pulled up about 60 seconds after that, and one of them walked into my house with his body cam rolling and his weapon drawn to clear the upstairs. Daryl was hiding in our spare bedroom closet, pants on but shirt off. His shoes were sitting next to my wife's bed. His wallet was on her nightstand. 2 glasses of red wine were sitting on the dresser. The deputy walked Daryl downstairs in his bare feet, holding his shoes in one hand, and the body cam caught every step of it. They arrested my wife in our driveway for assault and battery. They put her in handcuffs in front of the entire neighborhood. I stood on my front lawn and watched her get loaded into the back of a sheriff's cruiser. She did not say one word to me as they drove her away. Daryl was given a ride home by one of the deputies, and they took his statement. I went inside my house at 10 p.m., took a shower, and sat down on my couch in the living room with a glass of water. I did not sleep at all that night. She spent 16 hours in a holding cell. Her sister bailed her out the next morning. By the time she was processed and released, I had already done three things. I had filed for an emergency protective order at the magistrate's office, which got granted on the spot because of the bleeding mark on my neck and the deputy's report. I had retained a divorce attorney named Frank, a retired JAG officer, somebody from my squadron recommended to me about a year earlier, just in case I ever needed him. And I had moved every dollar in our joint savings account, about $47,000, into a separate account in my name only. I am not proud of moving the money, but Frank told me later that was the single smartest thing I did. When she got home that morning with her sister, the protective order was already taped to our front door. She was not allowed within 500 feet of me, our house, or the contractor office I worked out of on base. Her sister drove her to a hotel. I had Frank file for divorce in Virginia 4 days later. Now, here is where the story took a turn I did not expect. She refused to sign the divorce paperwork. She refused to participate. She would not respond to her attorney. She would not show up to mediation. She would not answer the petition. She decided she was going to make me drag her through every step of the process and try to get me to give up. I want to tell every guy watching this something Frank told me in his office that first week. He told me there is no state in this country where one spouse can stop the other spouse from getting a divorce. Not one. He told me she could refuse to sign a single piece of paper, and I could still get my divorce. He told me Virginia gives the responding spouse 21 days to file an answer after being properly served. If she did not respond in 21 days, I could file for a default divorce, and the judge could grant it on my terms. If she did respond and contest it, Frank would just take it to a contested final hearing, and the judge would rule with or without her cooperation. She had no power here. She just did not know it yet. She let the 21 days pass without filing one piece of paperwork. Frank filed for default. The court set a final hearing date 90 days out. On the day of the final hearing, she finally hired her own attorney and tried to file an emergency motion to vacate the default. The judge denied it. She had been given 21 days. She had been given 90 more days after that, and she had ignored every single notice. The case went to a contested final hearing, and Frank was ready. Frank had subpoenaed every piece of evidence from that night: the deputy's body cam footage, the arrest report, the emergency protective order paperwork, the booking photographs, her toxicology. She had blown a 0.21 at the station, almost 3 times the legal limit. Daryl's statement to the deputies, including his admission that he had been seeing my wife on and off for almost 2 years, and the still images the deputy had pulled from his body cam, including the photo of Daryl's shoes next to my wife's bed. Frank also subpoenaed Daryl himself. Daryl showed up because he had no choice. Frank put him on the stand and asked him exactly 6 questions. By the time Frank was done, the courtroom knew about every hotel, every bar night, every text message, and every weekend Daryl and my wife had spent together, going back to before our marriage counseling even ended. She had been seeing him through the entire counseling. She had been seeing him while she was telling me our marriage was healing. She had never stopped. Then Frank made his closing argument to the judge. He laid out 3 things. First, Virginia is a fault-based state. Adultery is a recognized ground for divorce here, and the evidence had been overwhelming. He told the judge there was no question of fact. Second, Virginia law states that adultery is a bar to spousal support unless the court finds doing so would create a manifest injustice to the offending spouse. Frank argued there was no manifest injustice here. I had supported her for 28 years. She had a college degree. She was 51 years old and able-bodied. She had a family who could help her get back on her feet. There was no reason to grant her one penny of spousal support. Third, Virginia equitable distribution law specifically allows the court to consider fault when dividing marital property. Frank argued that under US FSPA, my Air Force pension was indeed a marital asset subject to division. But he also argued that her adultery, her assault on me, her alcoholism, and her refusal to participate in the divorce all weighed against giving her the standard 50% share. He asked the judge to award her no more than 25% of the marital portion of my retirement. The judge took 3 weeks to issue the final ruling. When it came back, here is what it said. She received 0 spousal support. She received 28% of the marital portion of my pension, not 50. I kept the house. I kept the contractor income going forward. She got her clothes, her car, and her half of the joint savings account that I had moved early. Frank told me later that the body cam footage was the single most important piece of evidence he had ever introduced in a contested divorce in 19 years of practicing law. He said the judge watched 11 minutes of that footage in chambers, 11 minutes of my wife screaming, swinging a wine bottle at my head, and Daryl being walked out of our spare bedroom in his bare feet. 11 minutes was all it took. Listen, I want every man watching this to take something away from this video. If you are being abused by your wife, and I do not care how big you are or how tough you are, get out, document it, call the police when it happens. Do not put your hands on her ever, no matter how much she pushes, because the only thing that saved me was a body camera and a deputy's report. If I had hit her back even one time in 28 years, I would have been the one in handcuffs. I would have lost my pension. I would have lost my contractor job. I would have lost my reputation. Instead, I lost a woman who was never really mine to begin with, and I kept everything else. If your wife is cheating on you and refusing to give you a divorce, I want you to hear me on this. She cannot stop you. There is not one state in this country where she has the power to keep you married against your will. She can refuse to sign every piece of paper you put in front of her. She can ignore every notice. She can make it harder, but she cannot keep you. Find an attorney who knows what they are doing. File the paperwork, wait the clock out, and the judge will free you. She is living in a 1-bedroom apartment about 4 miles from the bar. Daryl's wife divorced him too. He moved back in with his mother in West Virginia. And me, I am dating a woman I met at a VFW dinner about 3 months ago. She is a retired Navy nurse. And no, I know what you are thinking about nurses. I have listened to enough of Tony's videos. But at her age, I would think she is done with all the BS at least. That's what I have seen. She drinks 1 glass of wine with dinner, and she is not abusive, and she goes to bed at 10 p.m. every night.